Welcome back, Alvaro Peralta with MiningIR, and we are here in Quebec City at the Mining Investment Event of the North. With me, I have Richard Carleton from the CSE.
Thank you, Alvaro. Pleasure to be here this afternoon.
Yeah, here we are, not too far from Toronto, in a different province, but same industry.
Absolutely. Yeah, again, it's a pleasure to talk about the mining industry because it's been the key driver of growth for the Canadian Securities Exchange, certainly over the last 2 to 3 years in particular. And we've seen something of a rotation from battery metals investment maybe 2-3 years ago, where we saw nickel, copper, cobalt, zinc, graphite, lithium, and so on, and the rare earths, of course, receive a lot of attention from the investment community. And more recently, of course, the precious metals and uranium have been back in vogue in a
gold and silver
in a big way.
Well,
and that said, of course, financing conditions are extremely challenging for the issuers.
Okay.
And so we're seeing companies that are, working very, very hard to raise additional funds to extend the projects, because by and large, these are exploration stage companies that the money's pretty much going straight into the ground to each month's drilling season, essentially. And so again, it is a very challenging funding condition. I will say that companies that are pursuing projects in the province of Quebec are doing, I'd say, better than peers in most other mining jurisdictions around the world. The rules here are very clear, and the government policies really do support the development of the mining industry. And so kudos to the Quebec government for, I think...
They put their money where their mouth is. Absolutely.
Absolutely. And so, again, I think it's probably the best possible jurisdiction for companies to be working. So, again, obviously, we're here in Quebec City to support many of our issuers who are here at the show. And again, it's like all of them, generally speaking, looking to make contacts to support their fundraising activities, generally speaking. There's obviously a lot of majors here, and although we haven't seen a lot of mergers and acquisitions activity yet, I think there are people that believe in a number of the different commodities. There will be consolidation as the major operating companies do start to pick up companies that are a little further along the exploration stage. And again, I think one of the things that's been holding it back is relatively high long-term interest rates, which of course make developing the feasibility studies a little bit more challenging. And of course, inflationary cost pressures have raised that cost of putting projects into production.
Well, the other part of it, I think, Richard, is this: when you see gold finally hit its stride a little bit now, and then it's starting to go in the direction it needs to go. I think for the bigger guys, they're able to shore up their dollars themselves so that they can actually go shopping and look at some of these opportunities. I want to pull back a little bit. I think a lot of our viewers, the investors that kind of look at this, and the retail investors, they may not be as familiar with the CSE as they are with some of the other exchanges. Why does the CSE exist? Obviously, there was a gap in the marketplace that you guys are addressing, and you're doing a phenomenal job of addressing it. So why don't we tell them a little bit about it so that they peek behind the curtain a little bit and understand what it is that they're buying into when they're buying a company on the CSE?
Absolutely. Well, there's nothing I like talking more about than, of course, our own exchange. But we actually celebrated our 20th anniversary as an exchange last week, and it was just a real milestone, obviously, for the team. We were really conceived as an alternative market, a disruptor market, to provide companies with a lower cost of capital. We wanted to make the listings rules clearer, more objective, more predictable, providing a faster path to market for companies, not with less regulation necessarily, like people sometimes think that's incorrect. But what we're really all about is making sure that at the end of the day, an issuer in our marketplace has a lower cost of capital than on their listing alternatives in Canada and internationally. And as I say, we can only do that by offering superior service levels, deep knowledge, expertise, and so on in a variety of different industry segments. So we obviously have very, very experienced mining people working with the companies. And so we've developed a wonderful working relationship with the lawyers, the auditors, and the investment banking firms that advise the mining industry, as well as the entrepreneurs themselves. And so one of the great things about the mining industry is so many of these industry leaders have 5 or 6 projects going at any given time.
Right.
So if we earn their trust and do a good job, as we list, say, one of their more mature projects, and they have a very positive customer service experience, we're going to see a continuing relationship with those entrepreneurs as they bring us more and more companies. And the upshot to that is we have listed the vast majority of the new companies coming into the Canadian market over the last 3 years. So leaving aside, obviously, financial products like ETFs and capital pool companies and
Right.
so on, but active businesses listing on Canadian exchanges, the vast majority have taken place on the Canadian Securities Exchange.
That's it's such a huge gap that was missed, that needed to be filled. Access to capital by going public and having that road be a little bit smoother, not such an uphill, with so many barriers to entry, I think bodes well for the whole industry. It makes it a lot easier for the big boys to actually have eyes on a potential project, and that is of value to them as well. Give me a sense a little bit about, obviously, we've been in a rut for quite a long time, but the light at the end of the tunnel seems to be emerging. What does the CSE see right now in terms of turns in the market?
Well, as I say, we have a lot of companies which have been conditionally approved for listing. And generally speaking, the condition they have to meet is the financing.
Right.
And so, again, in addition to the companies that are already listed, we have a lot of people who are still private, but are looking to raise the sufficient funds to get over the start line. But
those hurdles have been crossed.
Well, so in terms of the project, the technical documentation, the management team, the board of directors, everything's in place.
There's one little
They
ducky.
just need to get the money in the door. And I will say, one of the challenges that we have as an organization right now, and that was a great question about, what does the CSE mean and what's our position in the marketplace, is our issuers are now moving far beyond the Canadian borders, right? So they're talking to folks in the U.S. Now, we're pretty well known in the U.S. in a variety of investment circles, primarily as a result of our cannabis work, say 10 years ago or so.
Right.
But they're also going into Europe. They're going into South Asia, into Australia. And those are places where we're not as well known as certainly some of the alternative venues in Canada. So we've had to basically burn up our frequent flyer miles, our shoe leather, and so on, and get out to talk to people in these different jurisdictions around the world and try to make arrangements, say, with the local marketplaces if they're interested in dually listing or accessing investor capital locally and assuring those investors that, in fact, we are a regulated marketplace, that the rules are basically the same in terms of continuous disclosure, and that the activities, the trading activities, are monitored by the same organization, CIRO, in Canada as it is for the other marketplaces in Canada. So again, we have more work to do in terms of educating these pools of capital in, obviously, in some cases literally on the other side of the planet.
Right.
In order to support the efforts of our issuers to, again, secure the investment capital required to advance their projects.
Let's talk about this particular show. What are you hoping to gain here, and what are the stories that you want to kind of keep putting forward? And let's talk a little bit about some of your clients that are here.
Well, we have a large number of issuers who are exhibiting here. And again, I think this show has developed a wonderful reputation as drawing in really good representation from the senior mining community, from the investment banks, from investors particularly in Canada and the United States. And so it's a wonderful opportunity for them to make the kinds of contacts required to, maybe down the road a little bit that can translate into funding opportunities, investment banking and advisory mandates potentially, or, as I mentioned earlier, mergers and acquisitions activity with some of the majors. And as I say, the conditions today, not the best we've
Not yet.
in this industry. I mean, I think if the Bank of Canada does reduce the overnight rate this week, it's not a huge step, but it may actually spur a little bit more retail activity again. Trading, as you know, has been very, very slow across all markets in Canada for the last couple of years, really. And that's something that again, when we see more retail participation come back to the marketplace, just to introduce another big idea for you, that if you look at an index of the companies, say whether it's the gold guys, the copper folks, the nickel folks, and so on, there's really no correlation with the underlying commodity price.
No, the gap is divergent.
Absolutely, which tells you a couple of things, but it should translate into a significant recovery in valuations for the juniors in this space as the economic cycle, as we move into a different phase of the economic cycle. So again, I'm certainly the furthest thing you could be from an investment advisor and so on.
But it's definitely feels like a buying opportunity. It doesn't get better than this.
That's where I was headed with that particular point. Exactly. It does suggest that there could well be some really interesting investment opportunities for investors in the junior space.
Richard, you and I have never talked about the fact that you've been around for the CSE and have phenomenal guidance in its vision and its day-to-day operations, but there's a team behind it. Let's talk a little bit about the team. I think investors probably don't understand how much work it is to handhold some of these companies through that IPO and then thereafter, and making sure that they stay compliant and whatnot. Tell me a little bit about the team and what gives it the depth that it has.
Well, one of the great things that we had is that although we were a new company, we had massive quantities of experience, mostly gained at another exchange group in Canada.
Yes, we won't talk about that one.
So so the other thing is, of course, we've known each other, for 35 or 40 years in some cases.
It's a tight-knit family.
Right. It's a very small community. And as my son asked me years ago when he was trying to figure out what he wanted to be when he grew up, he said, you seem to have a pretty interesting job. Is there some kind of course you can take? And I said, no.
It's called life.
Yeah, no, there isn't, actually. I had to think about that one really hard. But we've been blessed that the core team, deeply experienced folks, worked with the companies, understood the goal, what we needed to do to provide a better mousetrap for the issuers. And then the other fun thing has been, over the years, we've attracted like-minded individuals who similarly have deep experience, whether it's from the dealer community, the investment banks, and so on, as well as, again, our friends at the other marketplaces in Canada. And so we've been able to augment our team as time has gone on. We now have slightly more than 80 employees based in Vancouver and in Toronto. And all of them are, as I say, deeply experienced, have great working relationships with each other and with the folks that we need to interface with. And great point you made. We've always talked to the companies about the fact that the day they go public, that's the
starting line.
They've just gotten to the
It is the starting line. Absolutely.
And it is a tremendous challenge, given how many, hundreds and thousands of small cap companies there are listed in North America, to engage with the investor community to gain a little bit of mind share. And so we have to work with a number of service partners to try to provide them, our issuers, with the opportunities to tell their stories and to engage. And as you know, it's really challenging in this new world when mining isn't necessarily something that, say, a Gen X or Gen Y or Gen Z understands innately. They think it may be environmentally impactful and have other issues that the industry needs to explain its story to engage. Well, again, how do you do that? Through TikTok videos, through Instagram engagements? Is it using YouTube and some of the other channels, as well as some of the more traditional things to provide exposure to the company? So it's as you know, it's a very difficult, challenging exercise for these small companies to win that mind share for the investor.
Yeah, the access to a microphone has never been easier, which in and of itself is a challenge, because how do you deal with all the platforms, and how do you get your stories out and keep them out there? I'll tell you this, my experience of the CSE, as it pertains to the people that I've met that work at the CSE, that are on that front line helping these companies, they have a phenomenal capacity, and that is the duality of being able to have urgency and patience all in one. And I think that is, it's such a stressful time when you are trying to get to the IPO and then past that. And to have that depth of knowledge that you're talking about, the hundreds of years of combined experience, access, not just to the market itself, to everything that supports the market, the legal, the accounting, all the different pieces. There's such a generous nature in your team of providing those contacts and of having the patience and at the same time understanding the urgency that it's got to get done.
Well, I will say, and thank you for those comments. It is certainly rewarding to hear. And where I will trace that to in our corporate DNA is, and I always remind prospective clients of ours, we're a startup too. And we experienced all of the lows early on, cash flow problems, having to run it lean as we possibly could, all of the challenges.
Wearing multiple hats.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And no sense of entitlement in terms of the client relationships that we have, because every one of them, somebody had a choice, right? They could have dealt somewhere else and they chose to work with us. And that's something that, again, is obviously rewarding, as it validates the approach of the business model that we have. But as I say, we know what it's like to wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and worry about payroll on Friday because,
cash flow is cash flow.
Because the cash flow has been a little tight this month. So, and that, as I say, I think that guides a lot of the approach that we take to working with folks that are, they are about to embark on exactly the same journey.
Richard, it's been such a pleasure to have you on again, and you guys do a great service to the industry, and we're always happy to have you on. I think it's time to go enjoy some lunch.
All right.
And it's been a real pleasure.
Pleasure.